Lord by saying, "Oh, sovereign Lord." Because, he speaks the same language. Obviously, he's hearing this word from the Lord, and he's hearing from the Lord that he will shield him as a king would shield his subjects. And so Abraham responds to the Lord by saying, "Sovereign Lord, I've been waiting for years for you to come good on your promise. What can you give me, since Eliezer of Damascus is going to inherit my estate?" Now, what's going on here is the normal exchange of Oriental bartering. The Lord comes to Abraham, and Abraham has heard from the Lord that there is a promise that God has in his heart for him, and the promise is this, that Abraham will have many, many children, and his children will touch the planet as he extends his influence through those children, touching every culture, nation, and tongue. But if you've got no children, then you're wondering how that's going to happen. And so Abraham is just seeing whether the Lord is open to a negotiation. And if he's open to a negotiation, then the negotiation will be settled and sealed only if they have a covenant between them. And a covenant between them means that whatever's been said now is secured. Whatever has been promulgated, spoken about, is now given a sense of permanency. And the way that it becomes permanent and secure is that the two people who are talking become one. They give up their independent identities, and their new identity is tied up with one another. And that is symbolized by them giving up their old lives in the death of a substitute who is killed, and by taking up a new life which is bound up in their relationship with this covenant partner with whom they now share a new identity forever. And if you have an identity that you share with somebody else, that means that everything about them and all of their resources are no longer just talked about as something that is possible, but now you have access to them because they are yours. Do you get that? Now, the last vestige of covenant making within our society, and let's be honest, it's almost gone there as well, is in the marriage service. Two become one, they share their resources forever, and their independent identities are given up so that they have a common identity together forever. So Abraham is looking for this. God has spoken, he has given his promise, but the promise has not been ratified in blood. It has not been ratified in a covenant. And so Abraham wants that, and he's looking for certainty, because certainty cannot come in words alone. He needs the word to become flesh. And so they have a little chat, and then God says the words that he's been longing to hear. "Bring me a heifer." Now, it doesn't mean much to you, but to Abraham it meant everything. Now, the Lord said, "And a goat," and he's yeah, and he's off. He's gone. He grabs the best heifer. He grabs all of the other animals that are identified by the Lord. He slaughters them in the field. He cuts them from nose to tail and lays open their pieces in the field. He's walked between the pieces himself. He's bloody and full of gore. And as he has given up these animals, he has made the commitment that he will give up his life, and he has written that promise in the blood of the substitutes that now lay in the field dead. And he waits. He drives off the birds of prey seeking carrion. And as darkness falls, he's overwhelmed by fatigue. It's an incredibly hard job. slaughtering and butchering that many animals yourself. And as the darkness falls, he falls into a deep sleep, and in the darkness and in that moment, the Lord appears. He appears as a smoking firepot. The firepot in which the fire was contained so that you could always light fires in the future. They had no matches in those days. They had no lighters in those days. They had a little pot in which were the burning embers of the last fire. The burning embers of the last fire on which they cooked their food, around which they gathered for warmth and harmony and fellowship. Fire, an incredibly important gift to humanity, but the symbol of God's presence. But God's presence is not simply a smoldering presence. It's a living, active presence. And so alongside the firepot, there is the blazing torch, no doubt lit from the firepot. And here is the blazing torch and the smoking firepot standing, apparently suspended in space, beneath the great arch of heaven, where God has indicated how many descendants Abraham will have as he looks up at the desert sky and sees the billion stars. And the firepot and the torch pass between the pieces. And God says in that action, God speaks both by word and by action, like the creatures that he's made to bear his image. God speaks in that action that he will forever be one with Abraham. Now, it's a covenant-making society. It's a covenant-making culture. And so the people who read this for the first time completely understood what was going on. They understood that there were two leaders. There was a greater leader and a lesser leader, but both represented the identity of those whom they represented. And the greater leader confers by grace upon the lesser leader the capacity to come into relationship. You see, here is the greater conferring upon the lesser a relationship. Here is the stronger conferring upon the weaker the right to have relationship. And so covenant has always been crafted in grace. It's always required the initiative of the great one. It's always required the initiative of the strong one. And God, the greatest and the strongest, confers upon weak Abraham the right to be in relationship. But it's more than that, because it's not the relationship of a slave to a master. It's not even the relationship of a servant who is free to do their own kind of stuff. It's not an employee. It is the relationship of oneness. And the best way that we can express that is in family language. They become one. God confers upon Abraham this astonishing ability, this astonishing gift, which is that he now is one with God and he can meet God eye to eye. And though God remains the greater and the stronger, he can speak to God as if he were one.